Hello and welcome to another game of Beyond All Reason. Today we're going to be taking a look at Isthmus back in the Geo spot on Supreme Isthmus. So I've just recently covered a video where you can rush a Tsar in about 6 minutes or so from this same spot, and you can use it to completely decimate the front line. I wanted to do a counterpart video for the Armada, but unfortunately Armada doesn't really have a counterpart to the Tsar. So instead we're going to go over to Isthmus's laser giraffe build. It's everyone's favourite Armada vehicle, the Starlight. Now I believe they are some of the best slow pushing units in the game, simply because of the high damage, the direct fire, and the range as well. So in case you don't know, they do have 950 range. The direct fire, as in, say the enemy is spamming ticks at you, the Starlights are going to be able to hit those ticks no problem, because of their lasers. Now he's going to start off by building 3 mexes into 4 wind turbines. It is very similar to the Tsar build. What you will know from the Tsar build is actually you can build 2 solar collectors instead of the wind turbines if the wind is not in your favour. It's something that I would recommend. And then later on in the build, you can eat those solars to fund your factory. This is where it deviates though. So Isthmus is going to build his bot lab here. He's going to go into... He's actually going to go up to 6 Lazarus. There we go. And into 2 constructors. In the Tsar video, you would have seen the commander walk over here, take this mex, and then build the lab here so that the Lazarus can go straight into the trees. One thing I will say is that I think this might be a little bit better, but again, this is something that will need to be sort of played around with to test out. So for now, I would argue that Isthmus build is what you want to go. So what he actually did was he went for 1 Lazarus to start off with, and then that Lazarus is going to fuel his energy enough so that his commander can power out a constructor, and then into 5 more Laz, and then into another constructor. Now then, the first constructor is immediately going to come over here, take this mex. He's going to queue up a construction turret on the bottom, and then into the Geo. The reason for the second constructor and the extra Lazarus is to hand off to your naval player. Even if your naval player doesn't ask for it and he doesn't pay for it, I would argue that these are so vital. This constructor and the Lazarus is so vital to his gameplay that you should just sort of hand it to him. It won't really interrupt your build too much. It's what, 200 mil? That's about it. About 220 mil. Now this is something that is maybe a little bit counterintuitive, but he's actually going to go into a T2 bot lab. So he is going to be handing out T2 to his allies. And the reason he goes into a T2 bot lab is the metal cost. So I'll go over it a little bit later, but it's essentially the T2 bots, the T2 bot constructors are a lot cheaper than the vehicle counterparts. I do not have many criticisms for this build whatsoever, but I do unfortunately have one. And that's the fact that he's going to build his second construction turret once he's finished the geothermal above the geothermal. Now that I would advise that you build all the construction turrets either down the bottom of the geothermal or to the left of it. And that's simply because if we take a look at this construction turret here can hit every single mex. Whereas if you build them above, this construction turret can only hit 2, maybe 3 if he's lucky. If you misplace this mex at all, it's not going to be able to hit it. Whereas if you place it down below, it's going to hit all of them, and it's also going to be more than capable of hitting your bot lab and anything else that you want to build in the area. It's also got a little bit more reach down by the coast, because Isthmus will be building a little bit of anti-air a little bit later on. So once he's finished that geothermal, he's going to go into a few energy converters, and that's simply because the geothermal provides him with a metric crap ton of energy income. as you can see there, 300 energy income, which it doesn't seem like a lot, but for 3 minutes into the game, it is a lot. And I mean, a lot. And he's just going to take advantage of that. He is overflowing metal a little bit. So I would have liked to have seen a metal storage come down maybe with the commander. But he's now going to use it on the advanced bot lab. So he didn't overflow too much. I would like to see him put all of the construction turrets here into the metal lab until he runs low on metal and then start to eat this up. He's also going to blow this commander. So he's going to walk his commander out here. Going to use the Lazarus or 1 or 2 Lazarus to come down and eat up the commander corpse for a juicy 1,250 metal to put into this lab. There's the commander going down. Another thing that I will say about the commander, when your Lazarus is eating it, if you can see here, in the bottom left, you can see the amount of metal that's left in the corpse. Now, because it is a corpse, the metal will go straight in as income. So if you see the Lazarus here, he's getting 57 metal income per second. That's from eating the corpse. So he's just about to overflow because he doesn't have the advanced bot labs done. And he is going to stop eating the commander. This is quite difficult to control. So you will need to pay attention to there. But he's also going to leave a little bit of metal in the commander. So even if you leave a single bit of metal in this commander wreckage, later on with Lazarus, once you've got the energy income, you can resurrect this commander. And of course, the commander with the D-gun can potentially be one of the strongest units in the game. So that's something that you do want to look at. Now then, just to go over it quickly, the advanced construction bot, the T2 bot lab constructor, is 430 metal. Whereas I believe the vehicle is over 500, so there's quite a big difference there. But he's going to start building some of them, and he's going to hand them out to his teammates. Sometimes this player up here will be the one to build a T2 lab and hand out to his teammates. But as you can see here, he is... I don't actually know what he's doing. He's a little bit lower on the OS rank, so he probably doesn't have a flushed out build order that he's following. Which is something that I would recommend. If you are a little bit lower OS, if you're maybe not the greatest at the game and you do want to improve, a solid build order is the first thing that I would say, which is actually the reasons why I'm putting these videos out. Because I just think they're so important. Cat here on the front line is actually doing very well. He's actually held off very nicely against multiple attacks. The opposing player on the Geo is got his T2 up, but as you can see, he hasn't started upgrading any of his mexes. So even though they're in the same position and they both are untouched, Cyphos is just much further ahead. He's got 2 advanced metal extractors up, and he is 20 seconds off finish his geothermal. And that's the difference between a decent build order and, say, doing it willy-nilly. So it is something that I would thoroughly recommend. I do have build orders up on my channel for multiple different spots. So I've got a few eco build orders. I've got naval. I've got this build order here, which I would advise that you follow if you want to go Starlights. Alternatively, I've got a Tsar build order from this. I've even got a frontline Thug build order, which I thoroughly enjoyed watching. I believe that was by Trash Panda, which is a very high skill player. Anyway, back to the build. So as you can see here, he's going to finish up his advanced geothermal, and now he's going to put down a metal storage, and that is for his T2 bot lab. So in case you don't know, when you are reclaiming buildings that are actually fully built and operational, you will get all of the metal back at the exact same time when it is finished reclaiming. So as you can see here, he's not receiving any metal from his Lazarus while he's reclaiming this. But once it's fully reclaimed, he will receive the 2,900 that it's worth in a lump sum. So if you don't have a metal in storage down, then you don't actually have enough capacity to hold all that metal. So you'll overflow a lot of it to your team. It's something that I would always advise that you do if you're going to reclaim a T2 bot lab. Or alternatively, if you're even reclaiming a T1 bot lab and you are already full on metal, I would advise putting down a metal storage. Again, it's 330 metal, so it's not the cheapest thing in the world, but you can certainly reclaim this a little bit later on. And then he's going to go onto the advanced metal extractors. Now, as you can see here, his ally paid him last second, requesting a T2 constructor, so he's going to quickly stop reclaiming to get that out. In fact, his construction turrets have accidentally just repaired this rather than assisting it. But here's what I wanted to make a mention of. So you got the advanced metal extractor down here. This one on the top actually cannot hit this, so it cannot aid in building this. So instead, the build power is going to be used on making more construction turrets down here. But if he wasn't making these, this build power would be lost. In fact, there is a little bit of intermittent non-use there. So he's going to continue building these and produce them for his team, so he's handing them out. The reason why it's probably best to do it from this position is because you're closer. So as you can see, these units are very slow. They're incredibly slow. So if being produced from this player and he does not have a transport to transport them, the time it takes for a T2 constructor to walk all the way down to his frontline players is absolutely abysmal. And it's really not worth it, because it'll take a good 2-3 minutes. And those 2-3 minutes are crucial to getting the metal upgraded. That is, of course, the main use for the T2 metal extractors. T2 constructors, my apologies. You can see there, 2.3 metal for a regular, but as soon as you upgrade it... Sorry, 2 metal for a regular here. As soon as you upgrade it, it is 8.1, which is... It's miles better. I actually didn't realize that. So the metal that is around the Geo is only 2 metal, whereas up the front it is 2.3, I believe. Yeah, you've got 2.3 metals up here. Is this the same for the others? I can't quite see them because they're on the top. Nope, there are 2.3 as well. Oh. I suppose the more you know. I've watched hundreds of replays from this position as well, and I still have only just noticed that. Right, so getting back on with the build order. As you can see here, he's put down an advanced energy converter. One thing I will say is I don't really think that he needs this. I would much prefer you go into more T1. And that's simply because you do have the space down here to do it, or say up here. So the advanced energy converters require 380 metal, whereas the T1 only require 1 metal per second. And I believe the T2 would produce the same as 10 of these, but it also costs an additional 10,000 energy. The reason you see people go for these when they've got aphises and that is simply space. So these require quite a bit of space, but as you can see, he hasn't taken full advantage of all the space down here. Another thing I'd like to say is the Arbalest. So anti-air flak guns, as you can see, his air player does not have many air units up. Unfortunately, from this position, a lot of people will tend to go into, like, say, 5 fighters and then start ecoing. Something that I would not advise. In fact, I'm going to be going over a build order for air relatively soon. I believe it'll be the next video I post. But in the meantime, he's going to just put up a few anti-flak guns, anti-air guns, sorry, just to make sure that he does not get bombed. Unfortunately, the advanced geothermal, it's only got 3,600 health, and if that blows, it will take everything in the vicinity with it. Now then, so as you can see here, he is gone for 5 Starlights. So he's built 3 already, and he's going to go for another 2. I would argue 4 may potentially be the magic number there that you want to go for, and that's simply because Starlights require a lot of energy to fire. A lot of units in this game are free to fire, but Starlights are not. So each shot will drain 1,000 energy from the energy bar. Something that you could certainly advocate for is actually a energy storage, just so that you've got a little bit more of a buffer, so that you can continue firing these for a little bit longer. But the advanced Geo provides you with enough energy to keep that relatively sustained. As usual, with every build, I would say put in a radar and a radar vehicle. Radar jammer, sorry, and a radar vehicle. And then just select them and then right-click one of your Starlights to have them follow. And that's because with the majority of units in this game, they have 950 range, but they can only see 650. So if you are trying to shoot things in radar range, so as you can see here, if the Starlights were to try and shoot these, they would actually miss the majority of their shots. And that's simply because it is inaccurate. So in the T2, if I find a T2 constructor quickly, he's building anti-nukes for his allies, and that's going to cover all four players, sorry, into a tracer. But you actually want these pinpointers, so they are very expensive, 810 metal, but you need 3 of these. So building 3 pinpointers will allow your Starlights to shoot enemies that are out of vision range and in radar range with accuracy. And that actually goes for the entire team. So those pinpointers will affect your allies as well. So the gauntlet will be able to fire a lot more accurately as well. So I would like to see the Starlights start pushing as soon as they all come up. And that's something that they are going to do. Just waiting on this last one. They are very slow units. I do have it in half speed, but if I put it into 1x speed, you can see they're not much quicker. They are very, very slow. Now then, he's got all of the Starlights out. I would like to see a few of the anti-air trucks being produced and put into this build as well. That's simply because Starlights do struggle with air quite a bit. Unfortunately, those laser giraffes cannot aim that laser upwards. But he's going to reclaim it, the lab, and go into 2 bot labs. And that's to produce pawns. I would say that ticks are viable in this instance if you are, say, lacking the metal income or something, or if you don't have too much metal banked up. Ticks are very viable, but it's essentially just to provide line of sight. And this is something that I would say that you could do with the majority of your pushes, especially the slow pushes. Because having those units up, not only are they going to stop the opponent from using, say, like a tick spam, or say pawn spams of their own, but they are going to provide vision, and that is the important thing there. So if I go into player view, so just to reiterate, he's taken both of those, he's got them rallied right the way across the map. He hasn't used fight command, so on the legacy keys it is F, and then select where you want them to go. And that means that once they encounter an enemy, they will stop and they will try to fight that enemy. That's not something you want to do. You simply want to be providing vision. So I'll just use this as an example here. So if you see the Starlight shot at that, and it missed. Unfortunately, it didn't hit that because the radar is not particularly accurate. So as you can see there, if I switch between them, it shows that those two are right next to each other. It's actually up here. And because those laser drafts are so precise, they will miss if the radar is not perfect. But then this is where the pawns come in. As you can see there, immediately evisceration from miles away. As soon as they come into line of sight, the pawns do have quite a lot of line of sight, so they've got 429. It's one of the few units that you could consider a scout in the game. And the Starlights are essentially just going to start tearing apart the enemy. I will say the tanks need to be up with the Starlights to provide them with support, because the Starlights are very slow. They are very squishy as well, so they've only got 2,800. Ignore the 47 there. That's simply because the Starlight has a few kills and it has gone up rank. In case you guys don't know, actually, units can go up rank, and when they do that, they actually gain health. See there, 2,836. These are still full health, but because they have kills, they are going to increase in health. I believe they increase in reload as well. You can see it down there. Max health plus 2%, reload minus 1%. So that's something just to sort of bear in mind. With proper support, these Starlights are going to completely and utterly rip through anything Even if a Razorback was to show up right now, I believe these Starlights would have no problems taking it down simply because they do so much damage. As you can see there, one Starlight shooting off destroys a commander. Now I say Razorback because that's a common thing for people to do. They will produce a single Razorback from the front line, send it down to, from the back line, sorry, from the eco, and they'll send it down here. Another thing I will say is, unfortunately, these laser giraffes, when they die, they do explode quite violently. So having them spread out, this sort of distance is perfect. But if they're a little bit too close to each other, say this one was to die, it probably would take these two with it. So they can chain react. On the back of this, I will say, ticks and pawns, they're not very expensive metal-wise, so you are more than welcome to go into eco, so fusion reactors, while this push is going. And that just means if this push doesn't end the game, which, as you can see here, the pawns have broken through, they're going to be taking out this Geo player. And that's because the Starlights have taken out the front line and this player did not react appropriately. But the Starlights themselves, they're just going to simply push down this side. And there really isn't anything you can do to stop them. Right now I'd say one of the few things would be air. There is no anti-air included in this what would you call it? This push. So air is something that they do have problems with. And there you can see it. They're going to concede. There's no way for them to stop these Starlights. They're simply too strong. We're going to take a look at the graphs just to double check. Like the total energy income, total metal income, just to sort of see how it did. But you'll notice that this player here did very well in holding and pushing the enemy frontliners back. There we go.
Ended.
I'm going to go into the graphs. Okay, so we're going to quickly skim over a second replay here by Cyphos. And that is just going to cover not having to build and give out T2 yourself. So in this game, he's got Ricker, which is in the eco spot. If you do have a high level player in the eco spot, 9 times out of 10, they're going to get a T2 out, T2 constructor out, and be able to hand that off to you very quickly. Bear in mind, it is something that you need to liaise with them during the start of the game. Just sort of ask them, are you going to go be handing out T2 constructors? Sort of say to them, I've got a build, can I buy the first constructor off you? So I'm just going to quickly speed this up. It's the exact same opener, so he's going to go into 4 windmills. He's actually going to build 2 additional windmills, and that's because the wind is quite slow. I would advise going into 2 solar collectors if the wind drops that much, simply because you can stall out quite badly on this first Lazarus. Once the first Lazarus is out, you're perfectly fine. It produces plenty of energy for you to continue going. So this build actually brings the Starlights out maybe a minute to a minute and a half faster, which is, when it comes to builds, let me just slow it down really quickly. When it comes to builds like this, I would argue they are timing attacks. So the faster you can get it out, the more damage they can do, simply because the less time the enemy has to build up forces, to react to it, and the less units the enemy will actually have. And that's one of the things that makes the Tsar build so strong, is because you can get it up by 6 minutes. This one here, I believe, is going to come up 9 minutes, whereas the previous one that we've viewed, I believe, comes up around the 10-minute mark. Obviously, because Starlights are quite slow, and you're building a couple of them, it can take a little longer to come online, but this is where it will deviate. So instead of building the T2 lab up there, he's going to build an additional construction turret. He's going to build the metal storage in advance with the commander, which is, I believe it was a comment I made that he should maybe do in the previous one as well. While he's waiting for the constructor to come across, he's just going to build a few windmills and add on another construction turret when and where he can. As you can see, the T2 constructor is coming over. So instead of having to build the lab himself, just going to get a T2 constructor and immediately start upgrading his metal extractors. I believe there is a little bit of a bug with... There it is. Now you can see the actual metal that he has. Don't quite know what that is on the replays, but occasionally you have to click another player on the player that you're viewing's team, and then click back to the player to actually get the correct reading of how much metal and how much energy he has. Now, as you can see, he started that, and he's going to plummet in metal, so he's going to sack the commander. I'd maybe try and avoid sacking it too close to these trees, because it will take some of the trees out. As you can see, that is just energy that you can claim later on. So that's something to bear in mind. You do not want to be sacking your commander next to, say, like rocks, or if there's another reclaim. If there's another commander reclaim, you definitely don't want to be sacking your commander next to it. That would be devastating. Again, with the construction turrets, I would argue these need to be on the bottom. These construction turrets are currently, they're doing absolutely nothing right now, whereas they could be powering out this metal extractor and have it done quicker. Again, I would say focus your build power, so if you're going to be building your metal extractors, upgrade the metal extractor before you start producing the geothermal. I mean, it's completely fine if your constructor is walking towards the geothermal and starts it as you're still building the metal extractor, but make sure all your build power is on the metal extractor itself. So from here, he's going to go into the vehicle lab. No bot lab needed because he already has the T2 constructor out. I'll just speed this up quickly. He's going to finish up the advanced geothermal. See, that's fine because all of the build power was on the geothermal. He got it up and there was no delay whatsoever. Like the previous one, he's going to go into an advanced energy converter. I would advocate for the single energy converters, but I understand that they do take a little bit longer to build, whereas an advanced energy converter is a little bit quicker and it's a little bit more focused. Now, just to clarify, advanced construction vehicles 550, whereas the advanced construction bot 430. That is the reason why he went for a bot lab rather than a vehicle lab in the previous one. Because in the previous one, as you saw, he had to reclaim the bot lab in order to actually spend the metal on upgrading his mexes and his advanced geothermal. So if he built an advanced vehicle plant, he would still have to eat the vehicle plant anyway. But for this one, he got given that, so he's going to go straight into advanced vehicle plant. He's actually going to be very nice and hand off a few T2 constructors to his front line, because unfortunately Ricker has not had chance to hand them off just yet. That's just to get the metal extractors upgraded. This is something that you do want to do, even if it does slow your build down by a little bit. I believe this probably slows his build down by about 30 seconds, 40 seconds, so he can get it up a little bit quicker. But having your frontliners metal upgraded is so much more important. Especially this player down here, simply because boats require so much metal that these being upgraded can be a night and day difference. So I'm just going to quickly speed this up as he gets it out. Again, he's going to put a few anti-air turrets up. That's simply because his air player, it's not really protecting him from air, really, is he? And as you can see on the enemy team, just a 5, which I'm actually looking at replays from his air currently. He's a very, very strong air player. So Cyphos, sorry, is rightly to be worried about this. Now the push is going to start. Unfortunately, it's stalled a little bit there. He has gone back up to 5, and this time he has implemented a few of the flak trucks, which I strongly recommend that you should add. As you can see there, that one's already got 14 kills. So the bombing run that Justified just brought in immediately got shut down. I would like to see this eaten up and him go into at least one T1 lab to provide vision for his laser giraffes. But he's actually going to go into a T2 lab. And that is simply to deal with the water. As you can see here, his ally has actually lost the water So unfortunately, these ships here, if he brings them up to the coast, they are in range to shoot the geothermal power plant. So he's going to build Platypus, the amphibious units, to try and negate that. It's also going to be building walls along here. One thing that you can do is actually box your advanced geothermal power plant into walls. That will stop units from hitting it. Normally, I would say that the platypuses aren't particularly great. They do not trade very well against naval units at all, but at this moment in time, you see the enemy player is trying to go into T2 lab with no metal. And that's simply because he lost all of his units to the fight down here, but he did not get any of the reclaim. So when you're on the naval, you definitely want to use this reclaim to fund your T2. He's handed off the Starlights to Ricker, which is going to micro them in the middle, along with the frontliners have handed off all of their tanks. And they're just going to make a slow push up the middle. There isn't really a whole lot the enemy team can do. Right now, he is going to actually do... He's actually doing a Starlight rush himself. But this is the importance of the build orders. So Cyphos has got a flushed out build order. And this gentleman here, it's a Yeti, doesn't. So he's going to go for a Prude. I'm not sure why he's gone for a Prude there. Maybe he's worried about a bombing run. But at the same time, he is only just building his Starlights. He is well over 5 minutes behind. And that's simply the build order. So if he was doing a good build order and he had Starlights out now, he would maybe be able to contest this. But unfortunately he doesn't. Now, alternatively to building an advanced bot lab, if your ally is actually winning the sea, you can go into a fusion reactor. And in fact, with the fusion reactor and the advanced geothermal power plant, you can actually, what a lot of people do is they will eventually go into T3 and do marauder runs up here. As you can see, because this player was crippled into that T2 lab, put all his resources into the T2 lab, and he didn't reclaim it and put down any defenses whatsoever. So these platypuses are actually going to push right the way through. But at the same time, this player did not get the Starlights up in any sort of decent time. So Cyphos' Starlights are going to push through, controlled by Ricker. This player has decided to build SARs, but they are like 10 minutes too late. The SARs are very good early game. They do not trade well against Starlights. The Starlights will absolutely annihilate them. So I just thought I'd include this game afterwards, because the first game did finish pretty quickly. Again, you want to be looking at anti-nuke system. You do want that up. This is very late at this point. We saw last time that he placed it over here. One thing I will say, Advanced Bot Lab, you have got this umbrella unit here, and that is a mobile anti-nuke unit. So you can actually set that to patrol between these two areas. And there we go. The push is just too much. The platypuses came up, took out the Geo player, and started to push right the way through once again. Absolutely nothing they can do to stop this, and they concede. I'll quickly show you the graphs from afterwards, team stats. I'm actually going to pause it because when the players leave, this all starts blinking and becomes an absolute nuisance. So as you can see there, Cyphos right the way up. Absolutely massive. That's metal used, energy used, Cyphos again. As you can see there, Ricker, once he was handed off the laser giraffes, right the way up. That's because they consume so much energy to fire. Energy produced. Obviously, you can see where the geothermals got leveled, built. So geothermal, advanced geothermal was there, I believe. Absolutely massive. Metal received, metal produced. There we go. Again, you can see the graph shows there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.